district heating is a member organization, and we have 75 members. We have about 20 members that are utilities, district heating utilities. We have about 10 companies that are consultancy engineers, and the remaining part, that's about 40 of them, are producing the technologies. And they are member with us because we are set in place to promote district energy globally, to make a green city transformation. So that's what we are set in the world to communicate with district heating companies and with cities or national level globally in different countries to promote district heating, district cooling, and telling them about how it can be done and why it is important for green to be more green. It's merged together. You have some research within universities, you have some state agencies, you have some municipalities, but you also have some district heating companies, you have some companies who produce the technology. I mean, you have to have them all on board. We will have it in West Europe, we will have it in East Europe, we have it in China, we will have it in the Middle East on district cooling. And often we will have these seminars and conferences together with local cities, local district heating companies, or local district heating organizations or NGOs. So basically we make a platform for people to meet. Because in Denmark we have had district heating for 120 years, and when we talk about efficient district energy, we're in top 3 in the world. They think we are number 1, but it doesn't matter. So what a lot of things we have learned of not to do, and all the wrong things. It's also important to do the right things. It's not that how we do in Denmark is the right for every country or for every city, but they can always get inspired from how we've done it and learn from the mistakes that we've done and take this knowledge from Denmark, put it into a local context, because you always have to put it in a local context. That differs from country to country, and it differs from city to city, and it differs from areas within the city. What is the best solution? So it's not one solution fits everywhere. But we have learned for these many years. We've been around this organization for 42 years. We have learned that even though you are probably one of the best in the world, you still can learn a lot from others by dialogue and see what they're doing and being challenged of the way you're thinking. So that's also why we're having the Danish utilities, because they don't have to export anything, but they love to meet other utilities because they would then be challenged in another way of the way we're doing in Denmark, because they get some questions, why are you doing this and that, and that helps them to be even better. So basically, debates we are bringing people together on seminars, on conferences, and then also we promote district energy through our magazine, Hot Cool. It's the most read magazine. It's coming out in 60 countries. So that's another way of communicating cases. This time it was this number here about China and Poland. So it's not only about Denmark, but also bringing some of the best international cases to a bigger audience. So that's part of promoting district energy, also having this magazine. We're a small organization, we are only 6 employees. Also having a lot of visitors coming to Denmark, helping them make sure they meet the people that can answer their questions or their challenges. So that's also what we want to have, this platform, go-to platform, where we can direct you into who you should talk to, depending on what your challenge and question is. It's difficult to compare prices across countries, also because like in Denmark, there are a lot of taxes in different ways. Like the oil we're using, it's only for peak load. It's maybe 2% of the whole heat load. Mm-hmm. But there's heavy taxes on oil. There's heavy taxes on coal. There's heavy taxes on natural gas. So of course the heat price is higher than compared to another country who don't have so high taxes. So it's difficult to, but again, the prices relatively compared to income is very low. People really don't think about heating, the cost of heating process. In Denmark, it's used to, I think if we go back in time, back in the 70s, all municipalities has to decide you want to go for gas or district heating, and they had to do some calculations on what was best for the society and what price-wise was the most best. We then had the combined heat, then it was not combined, it was the power plants, the huge power plants, and they were decided to transform them to combined heat and power. So the closer your house or your city were to a power plant, because they were transformed to a combined heat and power plant, then it would be district heating. But the further away you were, then it was cheaper to convert to gas. So even here in Greater Copenhagen, we have still a big part that's natural gas. But they are now getting converted into district heating, because we have decided from 2035 that we should not use any fossil fuel for heating or for electricity production. So now they've slowly been expanding with district heating now in the gas areas, in the bigger cities. And then will be more electrical heating, heat pumps in the remaining part. The district heating sector in Denmark is the main part, or in the bigger cities, is owned by municipalities. It's independent, they're running as an independent company, but basically they're owned by the municipality, and the board members are primarily politicians. Then we have in I think about 300 co-ops, so owned by the consumers themselves. That's mainly in smaller towns from 20,000 people and smaller. So in 20,000 people's cities and larger is usually owned by municipalities. Number one is in a national level they decide what is our target. So they have said, well, in 2035, so that's only in 14 years from now, we cannot in Denmark use fossil fuel for heating or for electricity. And then how to reach these targets, because they can not directly decide over these heating companies or electricity companies. But in the municipalities, they are also interested in going fossil free, because there's actually a demand from the people. People want to go what we call in the green direction. Actually, that we have an election. We have that every fourth year for the local municipalities. We're going to have this in this fall also in 1 month from now. And being green is top 3 on the agenda. So if you don't have a vision about what you want to do in your municipality, you're not elected. But even the municipalities want to be green, and even though they own the district heating company, they cannot decide it all to be district heating, as one example, because there are some regulations on when we want in one area we have natural gas today. If we want to have district heating there, it has to make a calculation on number one, it's beneficial for the society. Number two, you have to make a calculation that is also beneficial for the customer. So let's say you have 20,000 customers district heating now, and you want to have 10,000 more than now having gas. The 20,000 cannot pay a higher price to get the next 10,000 into district heating. So they have to make a calculation ensuring that the existing customers will not pay a higher price because you're expanding your network. Well, that's what a district heating company cannot put subsidies in to get new customers. So we have to make a project on this new area that it is cheaper than what they have basically. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to do it. But in these calculations, the Danish Energy Agency put some, the part of the ministry, have some prices. They say these are the prices you have to use. So for many years, we calculate towards gas, and because gas was so low in price, we have for the last 10 years, no development expanding district heating into the gas areas because we could not compete price-wise. But then they said, well, we have a national level decided we want to get rid of gas. So why should we then calculate towards the price towards gas? Because we don't want that in the future. So I think it was last year. So they changed the way they had to do the calculation. So now it's not against gas, but against other opportunities. And other opportunities will often be centralized heat pumps. So that's what they have now to put into this calculation. So now we will see the next coming 5-10 years, a lot of expansions. Now they turn around and it's because they say, well, gas is not being in the future anyway, so that's not what we have to calculate against. But of course, when you come out and you want to go into a new area with your district heating, the customers are free to choose. Until 2 years ago, we could force, when you came with district heating, they had to take it. But now it's they have the free choice of saying if you already have something else, you're not forced to take district heating. So there's a lot of, when a district heating company comes out to a new area, a lot of selling, marketing, dialogue. They are making campaigns, calling people. And so when they get into a new area, they don't start to build this new district system before they have a connection of minimum 50%, and usually some saying 60%. So they don't go out before they have a signature for more than half of the houses, buildings in that area, because otherwise it's too expensive doing it. So it's not just, even though you now have done the calculations, it's not that easy. You still have to go out and talk with people and convince them about this would be good. And people, well, they think about price. For, I think 80% is about price. They want to know, is it going to be more expensive than what we have now? It's going to be cheaper. And as long as it doesn't get more expensive, then they say, okay, and they understand it's more green. So they only want to be green if it's not more expensive. So that's also how it is here in Denmark. Even though basically we are having a green focus also in the mindset of people, but when it gets to money, we're not that green anyway. The cost of producing the heat, including all expenses, is the price the customers has to pay. So that's why in Denmark we have this we call non-profit. So district heating companies cannot have a profit. And if they had 1 year a surplus in economy, then they have the next year to lower the price. So every year the district heating company has to send in what is our calculated price for the next year, and that has to be approved. But there is a form you have to fill out to calculate your price. So you put in your costs of employees, of the building the system, the depreciation of the building, the interest loans you pay to the bank, the purchase of the heating source. If you have I don't know, if you burn coal, if you burn oil, if you burn wood, whatever, the cost of producing heat is put into the heating price. So yes, it is regulated, so it cannot be a surplus on the district heating companies. The reason they can do this is because when you invest into a new project, and you can apply for loans guaranteed by the municipality, and usually, sometimes they'll say no, but mainly, I think in 95% of the cases, the municipalities say yes. And if they say yes, then you have a municipality guaranteeing the loan. That means you can go to the market and get the cheapest interest rate at all. We're talking about, I don't know, at the moment we're talking about 0% or 1%. So that has a huge impact because the investment that's a difficult part. And that's also where we can see in other countries where they have more private operators, and that can be fine also, but many, depending on how they are regulated, they will have profits of internal rate of 10% or more. And of course, when the investment is a big part of the cost of the heat, If it's 50% of that's an investment cost, well, then the price is, of course, is 10% higher. But that could be fine if it's working. We see that is working fine in many countries, but of course, then the price will also be 10% higher. That's how it is. If you go back in history, yesterday I visited one of the district heating companies in Denmark, and I think it was 20 years ago, they were the first one to move into a gas area where they had gas, and they put now in district heating. And there, of course, was a big battle towards the gas company because they, of course, trying to protect the gas sales. What it is when you go into an area where, let's say, you have been supplied with gas for 30 years, then the pipelines is depreciated, so it still has a rest value. But when you have had it for more than 30 years, the rest value is very low. And then you have to compensate the gas company for the rest value of the piping system. That's what you have to do when you move in with district heating. So you cannot go into a gas area where it's only been for 10 years because they have not paid off the gas lines yet. So it's by law, it is they have to use a certain depreciation rate every year. So basically after, I can't remember, I'm not sure, but about 35 years, the value of the piping system is almost zero. Yeah. But if you do it after 20 years, then it's too costly to go in with district heating. As I said before, about 300 of the district heating companies, mainly the smaller ones, are co-ops, so owned by the consumers. Why? Well, it was decided right from the beginning, so it was not something, few of them actually. Newer came later, where was local people getting together and we want to create something in our town, in our city, and they built up this district heating. But it was more decided from the beginning, that's the way it's organized. So the construction of these companies were based on being owned by the customers or the consumers, depending. Sometimes you call them consumers, sometimes you call them customers, depending on what's about religion. Because customers is more a professional way, as a private company saying it's customers, but consumers is more integrated term, will say, well, they're part of it themselves, so some will use consumers and others will say customers. But interesting also, even though it is co-ops, they're only a part of the district heating network, not many know that themselves. Again, yesterday I went to this in a, I don't know, it's not a small town, but they had 6,500 connections, so 6,500 customers. I think in that town there are living about 15,000 people, and they're all 100% connected to district heating, beside from one house. And they are extremely green in the way they're producing electricity, also the heat. They're using heat pumps, they have some biomass, they are using surplus heat from a local industry, so they don't use any fossil fuel at all. And I said, well, your members, because or the owners, they must be proud of being in a place like this, having the heat is totally green. Well, as long as they get the heat and it's working, they don't care and they don't know. The day he has to raise the price, then he feels some more interaction from the citizens. So interesting also here to notice that the consumers actually don't know. Sometimes they don't even know it's district heating. They just know they have a radiator, coming some heat, and if it works, fine. And that's both the good part and the bad part about district heating, because you don't see it. There's some pipes in the ground and it's produced somewhere else, and as long as you get the hot water into your radiator in your apartment, in your house, you don't really think about where it comes from, and you don't care. So that's the challenge in involvement of people. It's very difficult, actually. As long as you're having a low price, both relatively but also comparatively to the surrounding district heating companies, then you don't feel the pressure. But you know, as a management in a district heating company, if you don't deliver that efficient district heating, you will have a lot of problems because the customers have to pay a high price. Then also there's another organization called the Danish District Heating Association, where all the municipalities, all the utilities are members of. They do every year an overview of the price for each district heating company. So you can sit there and see, well, the most expensive one is this here, and number 2 and 3 and 5, and that's also a way of motivating the companies. You don't want to be in top 10. They have a big red zone up here in top 10. You don't want to be there, and then they have a yellow of the next down to the next 50. So you don't want to be in the yellow and the red zone. And if your owners, the people or the municipality see this list, you bet. They will be knocking on your door and say, why and what can we do? What can we do to lower the price? Yeah. The industry, I think 5 years ago, when they start being some opposition about biomass, they made a certification on what biomass, what some requirements that should be used. One of them was, I think one of them was 50% should be, for the whole industry, should be local biomass from within Denmark. And the second one is it should be certified that when they took out some forest for this, it has to be replanted. So it could not, so there was not a demand to be certified tree. So make sure that the forest does not go away by using for burning it. But you can discuss, yes, you're burning wood within few days that has been growing for maybe 30 years. But as long as you keep a cycle within 30 years, it's CO2 neutral. But that's a discussion. But in Denmark, if we look what is used for heating, 20% is coming from waste incineration. So from the cities we have waste in many countries in Europe, they put into landfills. And actually that's some of the worst thing you can do for the environment is put into landfills. So in Denmark, it's by law you have to burn it. What you cannot recycle. And we're trying to recycle more and more, and there's a lot of pressure on that part to be, especially getting the plastic out of it and reuse plastic. But it's not an easy thing because plastic is not plastic. Plastic is 20 or 30 or 50 different fractions, and very few of them is really has a value. But trying to get that out and then the remaining part, we believe is still best to burn. Produce electricity and produce heat. So that's cover about 20% of our heat load in total in Denmark. And of course, the better we become to separate waste into fractions, that will probably be going down, maybe down to 10% of our heat load. Then today, coal is almost within a few years phased out, but for many years been phased out with wood pellets because it's the big central district heating utilities or plants. We believe that it's a transition phase we're going through until we have something else. So it's better than else solution because that's what we have now. That's the solution we can use now. It's more green. No, it's not leaving out CO2, but it is at least coming from some trees or something that is rebuilt within 30 years they're using the same amount of CO2. But we also believe it's a question of time. So these plants have been built within the last 10 years. So if you go, when we come to 2035, they will start being phased out also. And the new thing in Denmark is electricity. It's all about electricity. Electricity also for heating, going in through the district heating utility. Well, there's two things. There's surplus heat from industry to utilize that in a higher degree, and then is electricity. And often the heat you have from the local I don't know what you have affect a local. It could be a data center. A lot of data centers being built. The heat coming out from there is only 25, 30 degrees maybe. So you use a heat pump, and that heat pump uses electricity. And why electricity? Well, again, in Denmark we have decided that we have to be 100% green electricity. Right now we're talking about 60-70% of electricity are green, coming from wind, from solar, from also from production of electricity heating when we're using biomass. It's also counted as green. So that's about 60-70%. But again, when we reach to 2035, it's 100% green our electricity. So that's why electricity will be used more into the heating sector. So we see the heating sector and the electricity sector and even the gas sector is viewed merged together. So natural gas, yes, we'll still have natural gas because we have biogas being built more and more from waste from agriculture, from different industries. So we have more and more biogas, but still it's relatively limited. But we still think maybe that can solve some of the transportation part of, because transportation is really a difficult sector we have not solved yet. Of course, with transportation, we go more to electrical vehicles. But the challenge with electricity is with green electricity is wind power. You cannot control the wind. Solar power, PV. You cannot control when the sun is shining. But we know that using electricity in the district heating system, we can help them. So when there is a surplus of electricity, we have times now in Denmark where we produce more wind power than we can use. Then he get a very high price to turn on that electrical boiler. So he's actually helping the district electrical sector to use that surplus, I call it waste electricity. You used to talk about waste heat, now we're talking about waste electricity. Because the alternative would be they have to turn off the wind power, the windmills. So they can continue producing electricity because we can use it in the heating sector, turning on some big uses of electricity. And same goes for heat pumps. We can use the surplus heat and boost it with electricity, so we come up to whatever degrees we need, 70, 80, 90, sometimes 60 degrees is enough. So electricity becomes integrated part of supplying heat. And then it's of course about we have to store the energy. Storage energy in electricity is very expensive in batteries. Storage heat energy in water is very cheap, but you need a lot of volume. So we're talking about electricity is about factor 20 more expensive to store than store energy in water. So we've seen a lot of pit stores where we have big water. We have, of course, small water tanks, but also big storage facilities where you can heat up the water. Because when you produce heat from combined heat and power, and maybe you don't need the heat at that time when you need to produce electricity, then we can store the heat until we can use it at a later stage. So this, the integration of the sectors is what we see now in Denmark. So we cannot, the district heating sector cannot do it alone, being green. The electricity sector cannot do it alone. The gas sector cannot do it by getting biogas only. It has to be integrated. And you have to think holistic when you're doing your planning. That's the key for the future. And that's also a part of our story when we go and to other countries. I always said that in the beginning, you always have to look into the local conditions. So yes, you can be inspired from, wow, you're going electricity, you're going fourth generation. Well, you have to take the steps to go there. You don't do that overnight. In Denmark, when you go to work in a local district heating company, the thing about every day is how can I today lower the temperature in my district heating network, because they know if we can get it lower, the prices, the cost of running the system will be much cheaper. So a lot of the projects they're doing is always about how can we lower the temperatures in our system. The bigger system you have, the higher temperature you have. The smaller system you have, the lower temperature you can have. So like here in Copenhagen, the temperature is much higher than if you go out to a smaller town. But even in the bigger system, they're also looking into how to lower the temperatures, because there's a lot of money being saved in lowering the temperature in the system. And then, of course, you have to look at what about the customers? What about the consumers? Because there are some customers who need a certain temperature to run their low internal heating system. But often you have been surprised, many DC heating companies in Denmark have been surprised to see how much can they actually lower it without getting any calls from customers that are upset. And often they won't get it. So actually you can run a much lower temperature than you think you can. That's number one. Then you of course have to get some data on your customers. You have to find out which customers do the worst cooling off of the heat. So who has the worst cooling off? So if they could get, let's say, if they get 70 degrees in and they put out 68 degrees, something is wrong. They're putting too much water through the internal system. Then they know they're putting red flags on these customers, because they know what temperatures do they get in and what temperatures comes out for that house. So they have in the IT systems red flag system. They go out, take dialogue with these customers and say, well, we can see that something is wrong with your system, you can do it better. And they offer them to go in with them and look at how can they get a more efficient internal system, or they get a third party to do it. And many district heating companies today, they actually they will be getting a fine if you as a customer, you will raise the price. If you're not cooling enough off, you'll pay a higher price. And they'll put that money as a reward to the ones who having the best cooling off of the system. So it's not like the district heating company earns more money on that. No, it's a zero-sum game. Putting fines, you can say, paying a higher price for the ones who are doing the worst cooling off of the water, giving as an incentive to the ones who are doing the best. So that's a way of trying to motivate them towards have focus on being more efficient in their buildings. And that actually help for the district heating system to be more efficient if they help the customers to be more efficient. Actually, by law, we have to go out and help customers to be effective. That is, so it's an obligation, we have to do it. And I think as a private company, I would think, well, if I can lower the temperatures in the system, be more effective, then I can add more customers for the same amount of heat used. So I don't have to produce more heat. I can use the same heat to more customers. Having measure points, I would say, is key to have an efficient system. If you don't have that, you don't know how to do and what to do it. So having more measuring points is key. That's so today in Denmark, the more effective systems is data-driven simply. Having more measure points, both in the houses, but also in the system. It is data. And more and more of it becomes so complex, because now we don't just have one production site. You have, well, I went yesterday, they had 10 different types of heating production facilities we could use. And which one to use when? Well, it's based on some calculations. And these calculations you put into a system, so they automatically put in, so now we want to use it in this setup. And so measure points is key to efficiency. But it seems like need also to be some other regulation in Slovakia to give them incentives to one or the other way, but it has to come from a national government putting out these incentives or demands. You have to do it because otherwise you cannot be more efficient. Otherwise, the customer will not get lower prices. Yeah. Should be in the interest of the politicians to have lower prices for the heat of the voters. The building stock in Denmark is very old, and even though some new build is I think if you take 50% of the building stock today were also here 100 years ago. We have, of course, for new buildings, there are some very strong, it's called building regulation. Now I think it's building regulation 18, because the last time was in 2018 it was changed. It's extremely, it's so low the use of energy in new houses. But the challenge is the old houses. And they are relatively expensive to renovate. That's a challenge. So there will be, from now and then, some ways to support renovating buildings, energy in renovating buildings. When you do a renovation of a house, there's also demand of how much insulation there should be, how it should be more energy efficient. But it has to be, again, a push from government, both with the stick, where say, well, by force you have to do it when you do a renovation of your apartments. There are some regulations you have to follow, but also with the carrots, and we are also supporting it with, I don't know, some support for the people who are doing it or whatever, however they do it. Yeah. So it's a carrot and stick, but it has to come from politicians. It has to come from state level. I think that it will be a big challenge having, we see that often in old district heating systems being very inefficient. And we see customers want to get out of it because the price becomes higher and higher. I think you have to do a refocus and saying, okay, focus now on the biggest customers. And maybe we have to forget the smallest customers. They have to find out something else. Refocus and what you still can save, and that may be only 50% of the most heating where we have the most density. And then you have to go up a new piping system, because if you don't go out and renovate also the pipes and the whole district heating system, it will still be inefficient. Then you can put in some new heating sources, yes, but the system is still inefficient. So we have to renovate the heating systems, otherwise it's like a non-ending loop you're in. So we have to stop up and say, okay, refocus. I would say these 50%, sorry, you have to find another solution. Refocus on the biggest users, and then new piping system, new district heating system, and then find some low heating sources. Can be surplus heat from industries, can be supplied with some heat pumps, maybe waste incineration if you don't have that already. I would say start from scratch, start from all over.
I'm working with an organization of non-governmental organizations called International Network for Sustainable Energy, but I'm living here in Aarhus in Denmark, where one of the things, besides being the second town in Denmark after Copenhagen, it also have the second largest district heating system. And for district heating, Denmark is quite special because we have more than half of our heatings come from district heating in big systems like here in Aarhus, and in small systems in villages. And it has been built up over the last more or less 50 years, when in the beginning the idea was just to connect houses in the denser towns like the center of Aarhus, center of Copenhagen, where we actually had it was difficult to get good heating in each individual house, and then we found it was cheaper and also more environmental for the local area to have this district heating. In the beginning, the focus was just to get cheap fuel, like cheap coal and cheap oil, But already back in 1990, the idea came that you could use natural gas and you could make cogeneration of heat and power. So in many places they developed this cogeneration of heat and power. In the beginning it was gas, but also coal. And then gradually over the 90s, they also developed more use of renewable energy, used biomass, and they used also waste incineration, which is of course both good and bad because we got rid of the landfills. But on the other hand, we are burning too much of our waste, and now we realize that much of it could be recycled and used for better things than just burning. So it's been developing now more and more into new systems. Lately came the idea of having solar heating. So now, not here in Aarhus, but in other places, they have big solar heating plants where it's possible, even with big tanks, to keep the solar heating. Most places just from day to night and from one day to another day. But in some places they have big tanks where they keep it from the summer all the way to the winter. But here in Aarhus, instead they've been developing a cogeneration system of straw. So now they're using straw from the neighborhood from up to 90 kilometers from Aarhus to combined heat and power production. Plus they still have this waste incineration plant. And then they also have started to use waste heat. So from almost 10 different points here in Aarhus, they are collecting waste heat from factories where they can actually use the heat. And then the next development they have is that they're starting to use heat pumps. Nowadays in Denmark we have more power production from wind particular, but also from solar. And that means that our power is getting greener and greener, and therefore you can use heat pumps with better environmental consciousness. And also even the good thing about this renewable energy is that it's not only becoming more green, it's also actually cheaper. So we can actually have relatively cheap, continue to have this cheap heat by having these heat pumps where we take 1/3 of electricity and becomes for each kilowatt hour of energy. So we have the factor 3 from electricity to heat. And here in Aarhus they developed so far the biggest heat pump system in Denmark, which is a 10 megawatt plant which is taking heat from the sea water. We have a harbor in Aarhus, and in there they take the water from the harbor, cool it down, and send it outside the harbor again on the other side of the pier. And in this way they can heat up a new area which is being developed beside the harbor. But all the system is interconnected, so they can all the time use the heat from where the heat is available, where the waste heat is available. And then another late development has been that they started with a big coal-fired power plants, but now they stopped using coal and they're starting to import wood chips and wood pellets. The problem is that they're importing too much we cannot produce all this biomass ourselves, so it's not a long-term solution. So now we have to see what we're doing next. So we are now discussing in Aarhus what we want to do with the heating system. How do we want to get heat in the future? Of course, we hope we can insulate the houses so we don't need to use that much heat. But on the other hand, all the houses that are built are difficult to insulate so much, even though we can still do a lot. And therefore, they are looking for geothermal heat. So I hope at least that in the next 8-10 years, we will be able to turn off all this import of biomass and instead use geothermal heat. We don't have as good geothermal resources here in Denmark as in many other places. So we have to drill 1 or 2 kilometers down, probably, and then we can find heat which is maybe 50-60 degree warm, which is not enough to supply for the district heating system. But on the other hand, then we can use some heat pumps with a very high efficiency to just give that extra maybe 20 degree that is needed. And that about the degrees that is needed, I mean, the temperature of the water is another thing which is under development, because it used to be that they made pipes with high temperatures, 100 degrees or warmer, under pressure with the water. But gradually they are working to get these temperatures down, because the lower temperatures they get, the better function they can get from the heat pumps, the more they can get out of the CHP companies, and the more of the waste heat that they can collect is actually able to be supplied directly into the system, or with the small heat pumps. There are also small heat pumps on some of the these waste heat installations. Compared to other heating prices here in Denmark, like oil heating and gas heating, district heating is cheaper here in Aarhus. And of course, it also has to do with the fact that we do have taxes on energy in Denmark, including taxes on oil and gas. Almost all the buildings in the municipality of Aarhus, there's living 300,000 people here in Aarhus, and it is something like 90 to 95% that are connected. And those who are not connected is, of course, those which are living in villages and because even Aarhus is a city center, part of the municipality is a rural area, and there's some rural areas where it does not make sense to make district heating. You see that these old buildings, which were built 100 years ago, and maybe now they are even protected, so you cannot put a lot of insulation on top of them. You can still do a lot by insulating the roof, have very good windows, and also having tightened them so you don't have too much draft of air coming in when you don't want it. And also, of course, the floors are down. So actually this is quite an important part. And then it's also a question of the size of radiators and if you have floor heating. So if you can renovate an old house and have floor heating, you can still have just 35 or 40 degrees for the floor heating for the coldest days. And for radiators, it's also possible to have 55 degrees even on the coldest days. But of course, if you have an old house and you cannot insulate the walls, you need to have bigger radiators. On the other hand, sometimes they put insulation and they covered it so you actually don't see it. In Denmark, we have a law which is called the heating law, and that says that you can have that the municipality is deciding where there should be district heating, and then if in any place where there's district heating, there's a district heating company who gets some kind of the license to make district heating in that area. So we don't have more competing district heating systems anywhere, because that would be a waste of, they're a bit expensive with all the pipes, so it would be a waste of money to have this competition. And the same goes, by the way, with electricity. And in Aarhus, it is a municipality who started to develop it. So in most of Aarhus, it is the municipal company, which is called affaldsvarme, but it's because affald means waste and varme means heat. So it's because they also have the waste. It's a combination they use. They have waste collection and they have heating. And then the Danish law says that they're allowed to charge the cost of the district heating, but they're not allowed to make profit. And therefore, there are not many private district heating companies, because it's a non-profit regulation, so they cannot make profit. And that makes, of course, also that the heat doesn't become too expensive, because there's no profit charged on it. If you have a year, and if there's a small, say you have 1 year, you have a small profit because there was sold a lot of heat, or they got the fuel cheaper or something, then next year they have just to take that profit and feed it in and give it as a discount for heat users the next year. And also, beside the municipal companies, we also have cooperatives where people got together and said, we'd like some heating, and we think it's good with district heating, so we make our own cooperative. And then the municipality can if they get a license for this to make this cooperative, they can make the district heating, they also give a guarantee so they can get a loan to make the construction. And with this guarantee, it's possible to get cheap loans. And we have here in Aarhus municipality, there are a few places where when the Aarhus municipality started to develop district heating in the center, there was already some people who make their own cooperatives in some of the areas, in some of the suburbs. So we have some cooperatives here around. I think the law started in the 1970s, and there was never any profit making because in the 1970s there was not that much district heating, and most of it was from municipalities who started. I mean, in Copenhagen they started to develop it already from 1920 or something, and then it spread gradually over the years, and then it started in the 1960s. There were cooperatives who also started to make small district heating systems in smaller towns. In the municipality of Aarhus, there's very little natural gas. Actually, I don't know for sure, because if you look at the whole area here in this, because this district heating system we have is actually going from Aarhus, and then it's going to other municipalities of Skanderborg and other, which are west and south, respectively, from Aarhus. And in the whole area, there's some small areas in the western part where they have natural gas. Because natural gas was only developed in Denmark since the 1980s, when we found gas in the North Sea. And then they divided the areas between district heating and gas. And then this gas company got a license to develop gas in that area. And they did that with mainly areas where there was detached houses, where the distances was a little bit longer between the houses. The thing is that we have more than 10 big biogas plants in Denmark. I don't remember the numbers, probably more than like 20. And some of them are very big, and they're collecting a combination of different kind of waste and also manure from cows and pigs. And they're producing gas, and many of them are using it for small district heating companies in different parts of Denmark. But in other places, they started to clean the gas so much so they can put it into the gas network in Denmark. But people have gradually turned away from gas because many have turned to district heating, and they have turned to, so they're not used so much gas for heating as they used to be. And some are making heat pumps, and some are using biomass. So it's been less consumption of gas. But now this year in the summer, there was so much gas produced from the biogas plant that they had all the gas supplied. They had like 100% coverage from biogas, but just for 1 month here in July. But on the annual average, because it's still a lot of gas used during the winter, so it's more like 15-20%. We hope we can develop into 100% in some years by using less gas and having more biogas. They're talking about having district cooling, where the idea is that there are some places where they need cooling, and if they do that in the dense towns, instead of having each house its own cooling system, and it's not for residential houses, it can be for like big shopping centers or for some industries where they need this cooling. And then they're sending, instead of having 70-degree warm water that they send around for the district heating, they send around maybe 8-degree warm water, which can be used for cooling systems. It can be used straight for air conditioning, or you can have a cooling equipment if you need colder, if you need refrigeration or frost or freezing or frost, you can use 8 degrees water as a basis for making more colder. And they're developing that in Copenhagen nowadays. So it's actually in some central part of Copenhagen, they have this district cooling network. And they're talking about it in other places. So they're talking about it in Aarhus, but they haven't developed it yet. For district heating development, we have this municipal guarantee. And with the guarantee, you can get a cheap loan. And of course, there has been some subsidies for development of like new developments, like there was a subsidy scheme for, I think, 1 year for heat pumps and district heating, and there's a state development program for development new energy technologies, where also, of course, district heating companies who have new technologies can ask to get support for new developments. We have had a lot of plans of geothermal heating, but it has not been, there's just the 3 places it's realized today, and the plants are not that big. But they're all working on the way where you have 2 holes down, or 2 holes down like that, and then you are taking up hot water from the one and cooling it down and sending it down again in the other pipe, so it's moving around like that. And also there's groundwaters also sometimes, but it's difficult to get permission to use groundwater, so you don't get permission to do that everywhere, because the waterworks is afraid that you can pollute the groundwater by taking up the groundwater, cooling it down, sending it down again. There can be deposit of minerals. So it's important to make the systems where you don't get too much deposit of minerals. It's more a technical problem that if you have too many minerals, it can be difficult to cool it down, because if it's just saturated with minerals, and if you start to cool it, you get deposits in the system. So you get deposits in the pipe and in the heat exchanger. So it is an issue, and it can be a problem. I mean, as I said, we only have 3 small geothermal plants, and in one of them it has been quite a problem. In developed wind is definitely something, and also because it's all year round, not every day of course, but I mean all weeks you have wind, and then solar is becoming cheaper but that's of course mostly for the summer. If you don't have that much electricity or don't have so clean electricity, of course it's not so worthwhile to use a lot of heat pumps, because they do use power. I mean, but the factor 1 to 3, which of course is 3 times as good as electric heating, but it's not completely clean if the power is not clean. I believe that the biomass has a role, but as long as you don't need to import it. Of course, you have to be careful where it comes from. You have to look at the environmental issue where it's produced, but you can control it yourself. While we import a lot of biomass where we are not able to control it, and I think that's not sustainable. And then of course this solar heating that I mentioned, it's also an option.
Welcome here to the combined heat and power plant in Køge. My name is Lars Skulev. I'm the CEO of the Vex company. My background is a power engineer, graduated back in 1979. And then I have worked with general energy planning and design of natural gas distribution systems and district heating systems in an energy consulting company from 1979 and until 1992, where I changed my position to the Vex company as a technical manager, and had that position from 1992 until 1997, the 1st of November, where I've changed the position to the CEO of the company. And the Vex company is established as a district heating transmission company as a consequence of the energy crisis we have in Denmark and in Europe in 1973, as a consequence of war in the Middle East between Israel and Egypt, and the war in 1979 between Iran and Iraq. These 2 wars, they created increasing energy prices in Denmark, and we have problems with the oil supply to Denmark. Back in the 1970s, more than 92% of all energy consumption in Denmark, it was based on imported oil. And when they closed down the oil supplies from the Middle East, it was a serious situation for the society. So we got the first wake-up call in 1973, and then after a couple of years, we just accepted that this is a new world, and there was no political interest for the energy sector as all. But after the second wake-up call in 1979, we decided, all the politicians decided, that it was necessary to do something dramatically. So we made the first heat act in the world, sorry, back in 1980, where the purpose was to reduce the dependence on imported oil, to use domestic energy resources, and to increase the total energy efficiency in society, meaning that where it was possible, we would produce electricity and heat together in combined heat and power plants. And this decision about increasing the efficiency, that was the startup for the Vex company, because 11 municipalities in the western part of Copenhagen, together with the Danish Energy Agency, were sitting round a table and decided that in this area we will utilize surplus heat from waste incineration plants, from new combined heat and power plants, established a district heating transmission network, and connecting all the existing local independent distribution companies to this network. So it was done in the western part of Copenhagen and also in the central part of Copenhagen, which you visited yesterday. So today we have 2 district heating transmission companies in the greater Copenhagen area: the Metropolitan Copenhagen Transmission Company, the CTR company, if you have heard about that, and the Vex company, which is responsible for the district heating supply in the western part of Copenhagen. So the mayors decided to establish this company, but they had no money. They had 5 million Danish crowns. It's equivalent to 600,000 euros, and we needed 2.5 billion Danish crowns for the investments. So therefore it was very important to find a company structure which would ensure that we could get access to cheap money. One way to organize the company was to make it as a shareholding company. That's a company structure. The owners are only responsible for the amount of money they have put into the company, meaning that the risk is pushed to the other side of the table, to the banks. And when you move a risk to another person or another organization, the price for money will increase. Therefore, it was decided to establish the company as a partnership between the 12 municipalities. That means that each of the 12 municipalities, they guarantees for the total amount of debt. And with that structure, there is no risk for the banks. So we described the structure of the company. We described the tariff structure, ensuring that we would have paid back, and it was back in 1984, paid back all the loans at the end of 2009. And with this information in a prospect, we went to New York, to Moody's, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, and we got a rating for the Vex company at the same level as the Kingdom of Denmark. That means that we could go abroad and get access to loans outside Denmark. And at that time, the rate of interest in Denmark, it was between 13% and 14%, and outside Denmark, 8%. So this difference in rate of interest of 6% when you need 2.5 billion Danish crowns, that's the difference between success and disaster. So we got to the European Investment Bank, to the Nordic Investment Bank, to a pension fund in Tokyo, in Japan. And then we got loans from the international bank market in stable currencies. And we succeeded to pay back all our loans at the end of 2009. We started the company with background in the Heat Act, established the company as a planning company in 1982, transferred it to a transmission company in 1984, started the design of the transmission network in 1984, and the 10th of February 1986 we started the construction work, and the 1st of October 1987, it was only 1.5 years later, we started the first 50% of the transmission network. So we spent around 250 million euros in 1.5 years. Of course it was a big risk, but we could still remember back in 1979 where we were not allowed to use our car in weekends. You couldn't walk on a highway in the weekends because there were no cars. You could go on horseback in the city, in front of the city hall in Copenhagen in weekends. We had reduced the indoor temperature to 19 degrees C or 18 degrees C just to save energy. So the inhabitants in Denmark, they knew that this is serious. We have to act, and we have to act now. And we can see today that we were lucky at that time that we got that wake-up call, because it's a wake-up call you get in other European countries 5 years ago or last year or maybe this year. We are in that aspect 40 years in front of you. So we learned that we have to change attitude, we have to change our energy system. We were also lucky because we had oil and natural gas in the North Sea. So it was decided to bring that into the country to substitute imported oil. So it was accepted and supported by the population. And it has never been a topic at elections. It's first here from 2010, after we had the COP15 meeting in Denmark. There's been more focus on environment and how to reduce CO2 emissions. That environment and climate is on the top 3 at the political agenda. But during the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was not a topic. It was accepted that we started these construction works in the 80s and supported because it created jobs. And that was important at that time. Today, if you look at the amount of district heating companies in Denmark, we have around 400. 85% of them are owned by the district heating consumers on cooperative basis. That's a smaller one, but 85%. They are covering around 1/3 of the total district heating demand. The last 15% is owned by municipalities, and they are covering 2/3 of the district heating supply. So that's the secret behind the Danish district heating success, that the fundament is on the inhabitants in the cooperative structured district heating companies. The heat supply to the transmission network, it came from conventional combined heat and power plants based on fossil fuel, at that time primary coal, and from waste incineration plants where we utilized the heat from burning waste from households. These waste incineration plants, at that time, they produced only heat, but the waste incineration plants you see today in Denmark, they are combined heat and power plants producing heat and electricity. Some of them even with imported waste from foreign countries. During the last 10 years, we started back in 2012 with a revision of the Heat Act, which made it possible to convert the conventional combined heat and power plants from fossil fuel to renewable energy. So today, all the heat from the conventional combined heat and power plant supplying into our system or into the greater Copenhagen district heating system, they are based on biomass. It could be wood chips, like it is here, or it could be wood pellets, which is at our primary supply, the Avedøre combined heat and power plant, and wood chips again in a new CHP plant in Copenhagen. Also in 2012 we bought this combined heat and power plant, making it possible to supply heat into our transmission network. We constructed also a 20 kilometer new transmission pipe from this plant and up to our existing network, and it makes it also possible to start the establishing of a distribution district heating network here in Køge, because they had no district heating when we started. The plant here is a little bit special because it's built by the factory, which is neighbor here. They are producing flooring, and when you put in the wood to the process, they only utilize between 20 and 25% for the flooring product. The rest is loss. So we take here wood chips from the factory, we take sawdust, and we take dust, and it's burnt here producing steam. A part of it we sell to the factory, and they use the steam in the process for producing the flooring. The rest of the steam is sent into a turbine where we produce electricity, and then the output of the turbine, the steam there, we use for producing district heating. So until now we have around 50-50% of wood chips coming from the factory and wood chips which we buy on the market. And it's wood chips here from Zealand, the island you are on now, in the eastern part of Denmark. And we also get some from the southern part of Sweden. And from time to time we also get some from the Baltic countries. And we have a good harbor here. So it's brought here by ship and then by truck out to the storage facility. All the biomass we use is sustainable biomass, which live up to all the requirements in a new law which was implemented here the 1st of July 2021 with very precise specification of what's needed, so we are allowed to use it. Then also in this area into the distribution network here in Køge, we utilize surplus heat from a factory, and it's a funny story because it's a factory producing pectine, the basis material that's oranges produced in Brazil, where they take out the juice and take out oil of the peels, then they dry the peels and transport it here to this factory. And during the process where they take out the pectine, it creates a lot of surplus heat. This surplus heat is now utilized in the district heating system and covering around 50% of the total annual heat demand here in this city. And when we have taken out the surplus heat, the rest of these peels, they are transported to a biogas plant together with seaweed from beach cleaning and manure from cows and pigs and a byproduct from a pharmaceutical factory. So they mixed 80,000 tons of this dead orange peels, 60,000 tons from the pharmaceutical production, around 50,000 tons of manure and 7,000 tons of seaweed from beach cleaning. Mix it together, produce biogas, and we buy that biogas, transport it to a biogas engine where we produce green electricity to the grid, and the cooling water from the engine is used for district heating purposes. And when this biomass at the biogas plant is degassed, this left product is brought out to the farmers where it substitutes conventional fertilizer. So I think this is a good example how we try to think in Denmark, that if you have a waste product from a process, could you find a new process where this waste product could be upgraded to a resource? So it's in fact what we have done here. Step by step, we use the waste product as a resource for the next step of the process. So that's what we call energy efficiency. So these district heating companies in Denmark, we have, as mentioned, around 400 companies, and they have around 400 different tariffs. And then you will probably ask, but are the tariffs not controlled or set by the government or what it is? No. The structure in Denmark is that a district heating company is not allowed to make a profit of district heating supply. If we 1 year make a profit, we have to take that profit into the calculation of our heat price next year and pay back the profit to our consumers. So we do not make a profit for our owners. When we make a profit, we make it for our consumers and pay it back to them. So every company in district heating company in Denmark, they make once a year a budget, calculate the variable costs and the fixed cost, and make a budget and send that into a national authority taking care and protecting the consumers. But this body, they do not go through the calculation of the tariff. Only if the consumers complain upon the tariff, they take it, go through it, and maybe they accept that the calculation is okay, then there's no consequence of the complaints. Or if they find that this calculation is not fair, or if there's failure, they have the authority to force the district heating company to change the tariff. So in fact, our district heating tariffs, they are controlled by the district heating consumers. Every district heating company, they have a board of directors. This board is elected once a year at the General Assembly, where all the district heating consumers connected to the district heating system in this area, they have a right to go to this annual assembly. And each of them, if they are clever enough or if they make a good job, they can be elected as chairman of the board. They have a vote, yes, depending on the size of the house. So each consumer has at least one vote. So it's a very democratic structure, and no money in the district heating sector is leaving the sector and going to investors. And that's the same in our company. So if we have a good year making a profit, we can say yeah, and then we can pay it back. It will have no influence on the salaries in the company or going back to the owners. In this municipality in Køge, yes, we started back in 2013 to establish a new district heating pipe network. They had no district heating. There were a lot of satisfied consumers with natural gas. So we have to motivate them to change from natural gas to district heating. We made a business plan, a description of the project, which in Denmark then has to be approved by the municipality, and then it's sent out to the inhabitants in the municipality in a hearing process where they can comment this project and come with complaints or applause if they want that. It's normally only complaints you see. And then the municipality, they take these complaints or remarks into a new political process, and then normally they approve the project, and then you can, as a district heating company, start. So we can't just start to establish district heating in a city. It has to be approved by the municipality, and they also want to ensure that it's in line with their ideas about their climate plans and whatever it is. So therefore it's needed to have a close cooperation between the district heating company, and even if one of the owners of VEX is the municipality of Køge, it's separated between utility and authority. A clean cut there. So it was approved, and we started in 2013 with the purpose to supply larger buildings over 300 square meters. So it was institutions owned by the municipality, it was housing societies, and it was industries. And we are still in that process at the moment. We have just got 2 new of these business plans or project descriptions approved by our board of directors here last Friday, and hopefully they were approved by the municipality here the 28th of September, and then they are sent out in a hearing process. So that's 2 new areas where we go in with district heating to supply one-family houses. And the potential there is between 1,500 and 1,800 one-family houses, which, with respect to the plan, should be supplied with district heating in the coming 5 years. At the moment it's only the larger buildings, but this will increase the amount of district heating in Køge here with 40%. Right. We started from scratch, or below scratch, because we had only consumers supplied with natural gas, and they were happy with that. So therefore we had to find a tariff structure which would be of interest for them. So we made a calculation of a tariff structure based on their present cost for being supplied with natural gas. So it was the cost for natural gas, it was the capital cost for a new gas boiler, and the annual maintenance cost for a gas installation. We summarized these 3 elements and multiplied it with 0.9. So we could present them for a tariff which would cost them 90% of the cost they would have if they continued to be district heat natural gas consumers. And then we took over the responsibility for the consumer installation. So the heat exchanger there, it belongs to us. We have made the investments, and we are responsible for the maintenance of it. The municipality, they wanted that transmission from fossil fuels to a fuel with less emissions of CO2. We were interested to supply this area with heat from the transmission network. We put in the heat from this combined heat and power plant into the transmission network, and then we take it out to the local distribution network. But we were interested to build up a market here, so we should transport less heat into Copenhagen. So some of these consumers, they were in a situation where they had to change their natural gas boiler because it was old, so they were motivated to change now. Other of them, they signed a contract that we are interested in the coming 3 or 4 years when the boiler breaks down, so we're interested to convert. And others, they said, we are interested, but it will take for us 2 or 3 years before we can supply you. So they signed a contract, and then we took care of them. So if their boiler broke down in this period of 3 years, we brought to them another boiler, which they could install without cost for a new boiler, and have this for a limited period. So that was an excellent concept, because when you connected consumers to the network, we took all the boilers and placed it on a storage. So we had these boilers without cost. We had only problem with the first one, because then we had no boiler yet. So we had to buy the first boiler. Today we have a lot of old boilers, which we can lend out free of charge. But that was a good tariff at that time, because the natural gas price, it was relatively high. But then we have seen decreasing natural gas prices, and when we have linked our district heating price to the gas price, the income we get from selling district heating is decreasing. And that's not a good business. But what we have seen here during the last 8 months, that's dramatically increasing energy prices in Denmark. The market price for natural gas, it has gone up with a factor 4. From the 19th of January 2021 to the 29th of September 2021. And we see the same on electricity. The market price for electricity is 3 times higher today than it was 1 year ago. And the background for that is that the market price for electricity in Denmark, it's often set by the amount of energy you have behind the dams in Norway and Sweden, where they have a lot of hydropower. But they have had less rain and less snow the last year compared to what's normal. So the content of energy behind the dams, it's relatively low, meaning that they are not selling more electricity to the market than they need, because the consequence of that is that you have to produce electricity from other sources. The storages of natural gas at the moment in Europe, they have been very low, and we are filling up the storage, so they are filled up before the winter. So the prices for marginal gas to be used here now, it's relatively high. When there's less electricity from hydropower, there's less electricity based on natural gas. In Germany and other countries where they have coal-based power plants, they start electricity production from them. But the prices for CO2 quotes has also increased. So it's very expensive to produce electricity on coal-based power plants, and the market price for electricity is set by the most expensive producer. So therefore the electricity prices are high. So when we look into the future, it seems that we will have high electricity prices and high natural gas prices during the coming winter. And that's good for district heating. Because we have built up a district heating system where it's based on biomass from combined heat and power plants. They want to produce as much electricity as they can because the electricity prices are high. We have 35% of the heat in our area coming from waste to energy plants. They produce all they can. And then we have these smaller new technologies as surplus heat from industry. We have gas engine. We have, and it's not operating at the moment, we have a pilot project for geothermal energy in Copenhagen, which we started 18 years ago. And then we are testing a heat pump in Copenhagen Harbor together with the CTR and the district heating company in Copenhagen. 5 megawatt heat pump where we test it with sewage water and seawater as the energy source. So we have split out our demand for heat from different sources, independent or mostly independent on the prices on the electricity market. And the new technology coming in this month or years, that surplus heat from data centers. We have a very strong electricity grid in Denmark, which means that Google and Facebook and whoever it is, they want to place their data centers here because there's a reliable power supply and it creates a lot of surplus heat, and this surplus heat we can use in the district heating systems. And then if we go a few years in front, we will see that we will take out CO2 of the chimneys to reduce the total emissions of CO2. You can do that on all chimneys, but it gives the best economy if it's big chimneys with a huge flow. But we have started the first project together with the owner of combined heat and power plant, and it's an 100 megawatt unit based on straw. So if you can take the CO2 out of the flue gases there from a heat production based on straw, which is a renewable material, in fact you will have a negative CO2 emission, and it's a good business. That process creates surplus heat, and that kind of surplus heat would be used in the district heating network. So instead of being linked up to electricity or natural gas, you will be linked up to a lot of different technologies if you are linked up to a district heating system. Not in the far future, but in the coming few years. So that's a perspective for the development of our company. Furthermore, here we have the possibility to install a heat pump based on seawater, because we have still the channel for the cooling water, which we can use. We have spent 40 years for this development. It's not necessary in all countries to convert from coal in one step to heat pumps or to biomass, because it's also good to convert from coal to natural gas. It's a step on the road, and that's what we recommend to our colleagues in Poland. Make it step by step, so you also have the possibility to learn of the failures we also make, because we have made failures. It gives no sense just to copy our failures. In Denmark, we are, when we make a district heating system, the depreciation period must be at least 5 years and maximum 30. That's a rule. So we are not allowed to make projects with a depreciation period of more than 30 years. But normally we only go into projects if we have a depreciation period of around 20 years, 22 years, to ensure that your calculations are stable enough. But the project I mentioned here about the surplus heat from the factory with the pectin, there we had a calculation of a total depreciation period of 7 years, and it seems that we will be in home after 4 years. The only way you can extend the depreciation period now is to make more investments. So we don't do that. I think most district heating systems in Denmark today, they are the 3rd generation. We have just closed down the last part of the steam system in Copenhagen here in 2021. So it's the 3rd generation. Then it's relatively simple if you construct a new district heating scheme to construct that as a 4th generation. But you can see the fourth generation, that's many things. It's a matter of utilizing local energy sources and take that into the district heating system. Also surplus heat from supermarkets, from their freezers and cooling facilities. But you're primarily focusing on the temperature level. In the municipality of Albertslund, where we have our office, they constructed their district heating system from 1963 to 1973. That's over 10 years. And at the same time, the amount of inhabitants in the municipality increased from 3,000 to 30,000. So it was high speed. They have started a process to renovate the district heating system. And they have made a political decision that it should be a low temperature district heating system in 2026. Meaning that they are step by step renovating the pipe network to lower temperature, but they are also going into the houses because that's where the challenges are created, to ensure that the heating systems in the houses can live with a lower temperature. They have been lucky in the first area because there they had to renovate all the houses in any case. So they are now built up again. They are supplied with district heating at a temperature of 60 degrees C. And in some of the areas they have installation for the hot tap water, so they can boost the temperature for hot tap water to ensure that it's warm enough, and it's with a small heat pump. It's relatively easy to make this transition if the consumers, they have a floor-based heating system, because there you only need a relatively low flow temperature. But otherwise they reconstruct the boiler, the heat exchanger installation for this lower temperature. So they started out in the system, and we supply them in the system with our heat exchanger here. So they renovated step by step to low temperature, and then they still have the high temperature, and then they have a heat exchanger separating the existing network and the new 2026 concept. But it's a long process, and in some cases you can do it, in other cases it will be very expensive because the heat installations at the consumer level, they are maybe designed for 90 degrees flow and 70 return, and then it's a challenge to do it. But sometimes in these building societies they also need to renovate their internal heating systems. So when they, in any case, should remove old radiators and install new, they can install new with respect to the new temperature set. But it's needed with a close dialogue between the utility and the end users. But it's also a little bit special in that municipality, but because it's, as mentioned, created over 10 years, and they have from the beginning have had a very high level of democracy involving the inhabitants in many decisions. And it's still so that when the city council made their budget, they sent it out before it's approved by the city council, send it out to this group of inhabitants so they know what's the ideas behind the budget. They have also had a group of district heating consumers where they present all ideas before they approved it in the city council. Tariffs, also this process for converting the system to the fourth generation. It takes time because it needs a lot of dialogue, a lot of meetings and more meetings. But that's the structure they have chosen in that municipality. If you take in this renovation cost on a time where you in any case would have costs, it's very difficult to see if it's a cost for going from the third generation to the fourth, or if it's a cost you would have in any case. Of course, in some times there could be marginal cost for this transition, but if the consequence is that you will have a greener footprint, it's normally accepted. It's a movement that until the last, we had an election to the government 1.5 years ago. It was the first election where all parties were green. One party started to be green, then there came another one, they were dark green, and then dark green. And that also pushed the ambition for our target for CO2 reduction in 2030. It started with 50% reduction compared to the level in 1990. But today all parties in the parliament, they agree upon a 70% reduction. That we have reduced our CO2 emission in the transmission system at the end of 2020 with 76% compared to the level in 1990. So we are in front of the target in 2030. It has taken 30 years. You can't do this in a hurry, because if you do it too quickly, it will be too expensive for the society. We said we can make this kind of green investments when we have an open window. When we in any case have to invest in a new boiler, then we can invest in an electrical boiler instead of the oil boiler we had before. But if you do it too early, you will have double investments in a period, and then the price will increase, and then the consumers will convert to something else, and then you will lose the market. At least 80% of the fixed cost must be reflected in the fixed part of the tariff to ensure that you have a stable economy in the district heating company. The fixed tariff you pay, that's equivalent normally to the size of your home. So you pay your part of the capital cost, which is necessary for the heat production. And all of the variable costs, they are reflected in the variable part of the tariff. If you have a real cost tariff where all fixed costs are reflected in the fixed part and variable cost in the variable part, when you reduce your energy consumption, your bill will also be reduced. If you have a district heating tariff where that's not the fact, then you can't motivate the inhabitants to do anything to reduce their energy consumption. Back in the old days in Albertslund here, they had no meters. They paid for the heat in accordance to the size of the house. And the consequence were that no one were saving energy. If it was too warm in your home, you just open the window because the neighbor pays the bill. Then they started to introduce meters. And the consequence immediately was decreasing energy consumption. The first year between 15 and 20%. Because now you could see on your meter that if you change attitude, you get the money you save directly in your pocket. We are also interested in decreasing heat demand coming from our existing consumers, because if they use less heat, it will be cheaper for us to extend the system, because the investments, they are already done. So if the present consumers save energy, we will have free capacity to supply new consumers, so we can give them a special good offer to be connected, and it will be cheaper for all. So that's the argument we use when people are asking, why are you motivating people to save energy when you are a non-profit company? We do that because we want to make heat cheaper for all. in one of these projects for building distribution network in Køge, we will ask for a grant from the state. They have allocated an amount of money for supporting projects where the socio-economy is not in balance without a grant. So that's a possibility here in the next 3 years for new distribution networks. Otherwise, there's no directly subsidizes. We have had subsidizes on electricity based on biomass, but that's not the case anymore. We have subsidizes on the electricity produced on the gas engine based on biogas. You can see some of the subsidizes in Denmark, they are put over in the area where we talk about energy taxes, because we put energy taxes on fossil fuels, so you can one or another way see that that's a kind of a subsidize to biomass. Also to motivate for this transmission. From the beginning, when we introduced biomass, said that the biomass, that's for a limited period. But when we made that transition between 2012 and 2016, it was the only alternative to go the green way, because the development of heat pumps, it was still in a mature phase for larger heat pumps. So we had no alternative. At the moment we have 3 conventional storages in steel, totally 69,000 cubic meters. And it's hour-to-hour storage, just to ensure that we have balance between heat demand and heat production. At the moment we are constructing another kind of storage. It's not a seasonal storage, not the hour-to-hour storage, but it will be loaded and reloaded between 25 and 30 times per year. It's a pit storage. It's a hole in the ground with plastic and then insulated roof. 70,000 cubic meters. And it will go into operation next year. And when we have tested that, and it will hopefully be a positive test, we are ready for the next pit storage, and it will not be 70,000 but 200,000, which will make it possible to produce more heat when it's cheap, store it there, and also utilize the heat from the waste incineration plants, where we at the moment have more capacity for heat production in summer than the heat demand. So by that we can reduce the amount, we can get more of the cheap heat, and we can reduce the amount of peak load and reserve load production, which at the moment is based on fossil fuels. So we will also have a CO2 reduction between 10,000 and 15,000 tons per year coming from this storage. We are making a strategic energy planning, energy across borders. And the meaning is that it's across borders between district heating companies, between sectors, district heating and waste to energy. And it's across borders between regions. So we are working in the greater Copenhagen region with this strategic energy planning covering 33 municipalities. So we try to make a strategic energy planning connecting all these municipalities together and having a common goal. We have a steering committee with 18 people representing us, a lot of working groups putting focus on specific areas. Totally in the working group there are 80 people involved, some from utilities, some from municipalities. So it's a huge project.